So we plant about a pound of seed per acre, and in this particular field we're harvesting about 80,000 pounds of beets per acre. Harvesting, actually taking to the plant. So 80,000 at the end of the day, and we started with 1 pound of seed. Holds the world record for largest volumetric increase over the course of a growing season. Kind of a neat deal. Sugar beet harvest in Minnesota, or I should say in the nation, is the single largest movement of a vegetable crop in the world, which is kind of another neat fact. So, and it happens in a very short period of time, right? So we're starting kind of that pre-pile, get the plant running there in September, sometimes in August, and then come October 1st, when we can store them because the temperatures are cooler, we harvest them, put them in piles, and we store them throughout the winter as we process, right? So the goal is by spring there's no beets left, because of course what happens to a tomato when you let it sit outside and gets warm, it's going to spoil. So beets are going to do the same thing, and here we are, you know, early October harvesting beets. So coming over here and we'll check it out. We've already done some what we call topping or defoliating. So you'll see the beets have this leaf structure on top, and what the job of the defoliator or the topper is to defoliate, right? Take the foliage off, take the tops off the sugar beets, and then then what it does is it actually cuts the top of it out. We call it scalpers. There's some knives in the back we'll show you in a bit that actually take the top off. And if you come on down here and zoom in, so this top right here belonged on that beet right there. And so it might look like we're taking a lot off, but in reality we're not. And the reason we do this is because in the top of this beet there's a lot of impurities, and the factory is limited by how fast it can run by the amount of impurities that it can handle. So there's a lot of things that are not sugar that are in here that the factory would have to process out, and it would take longer and slow the factory down. So by doing this, we can improve the efficiency of our factory. And then here we've got a fully grown sugar beet. We can go ahead and take them out here, and you can see it's just a single taproot of a sugar beet. I found, if you can zoom in on that, so that kind of a greenish bluish, that's actually the coating of the seed, that clay-based coating we talked about. You can see there it just kind of falls apart, and that little black speck, that was the sugar beet seed. Plant about 55,000 of those every acre, about a pound of seed, and that ends up turning into 80,000 pounds of sugar beets in this particular field, right? And this is a good yielding field this year. I would say on average, we're looking at that probably 60,000 pounds of beets per acre on average, 30 ton. But with growing conditions, Mother Nature, this year, we're blessed with quite a bit better crop than that. And the sugar content is equally as good. Another interesting fact, about half of your sugar in the nation comes from sugar beet sugar, half of it comes from sugar cane. And 100% of the sugar beet sugar is, all of those factories are owned by the producers that raise the beets. So it's not some big mega corporation, it's the farmers that own the factory, that make the sugar, that get it to you guys, get it to General Mills and Pillsbury and Mom Foods to get it in your guys's into your guys' food. Here we are at the topper, the defoliator, right? And on this defoliator there are 3 drums underneath it, right? And so we got this metal drum right here, some rubber flails, and then some more rubber flails. And this first one here is that metal is just to take a lot of this green off, right? Most of the greens get taken off with that first row. The second row is going to kind of clean up the beet. It'll actually engage the beet and start touching the beets, and clean up a lot of the stuff right on the crown. And the last row right there, you can see on the outside there's 2 longer ones, and in the middle there's shorter ones. That's going to clean along the sides of the sugar beet. And then on the back you've got the scalpers. Let's go take a look at those. So the scalpers take off the beet tops. As you can see right there, the top of the beet comes off with this knife blade right here, and these just run up and down and take all these beet tops off. Now, if you got your topper set just right, you can do a nice job of kicking out any diseased beets. So if the beets are got a little disease in them, the topper will engage them, it'll kick them out to the middle of the row. We won't harvest them, we won't bring them to the factory. So let's go see if we can find some. You can see here we've got some beets in the middle of the row here, and well, that's a diseased beet, right? It's mushy, small. Same with this one here, right? Look at that, diseased. So those don't belong in the pile, right? We don't want these in the pile. If they sit there all winter, they can actually start decomposing. It's almost like a cancer in the pile, and it really just takes over. And so if we can keep these out of the pile, the better. So if you have your topper set right, you can get those to drop in the middle of the row, and it's just nice beets that you're harvesting. We've done the topping, and now comes the time for lifting. And so what we have is a lifter that pulls the beets up, and we have some chains in there that they roll on so we can shake some of the dirt off. We don't want to be taking dirt to the factory. And then loads it up, and we've got a semi that drives with the lifter right next to it and gets loaded along the way. And here they are coming right here, getting ready to take this next pass of beets. So you can see it's kind of a dancing act, well, kind of a ballet. And all of these trailers, a lot of these trailers are built by the farmers that raise the beets themselves. And pretty soon here you'll see the beets dropping in to the truck. Very clean. The drier it is, the better it is for us in terms of just hauling less dirt to the factory and to the pile site. So these conditions this fall are absolutely wonderful. You'll see, on the ground as the lifter leaves, there's a lot of small beets. There's small beets, there's tails, the tips of the roots. That's fertilizer for us for the next season. So we look at that, and although it's not getting its way to the factory to make sugar, it is fertilizer value for us for the next year. We raise some of the best corn and soybeans after sugar beets on our farm.
This is where half your sugar comes from. Maybe you were aware of that, maybe you weren't. The other half, of course, comes from sugar cane, which is grown in southern states like Texas, Louisiana, Florida. Minnesota's the #1 sugar beet state. About half the beets in the country are raised here. Minnesota, North Dakota area is about 2/3 of all the beets in the country. Some of the other states that have sugar beets are Washington, Wyoming, Montana, Nebraska, Colorado, Michigan, California. California has one area that grows. Our beet plant happens to own that facility. Pull ahead. That's good. We are headed for the place where beets are gathered. It's called a dump site. There's several of them in the co-op that the farmers are part of. And we've got about a, 35-mile round trip going here. We weigh about 45 tons loaded. So that's about 20 times your car. And we got 13 speeds here in the transmission that I'm playing with, and just having a nice ride down a country road. So this is the area I grew up, and I come home from my home in Wisconsin. I come back here every year and spend about 9 days doing what I do. So my job is to drive next to the machine that harvests the sugar beets, pick them up with this truck, and take them to town. Well, through town and actually west another 6 miles. So that's what I'm up to. This truck is a 1988 International. So for those of you who have truckers in your family, you can tell them that's what you saw today. 400 horsepower and 13 speeds. We're going to talk a little bit about what's it like for harvest in terms of what kind of schedule do we keep. So today I got up at 20 minutes after 2 in the morning and prepared my lunch. We carry a lot of high density food and a lot to drink out in the field. So then I was at the farm by 3:15, do a few checks around the truck, just safety and mechanical type things, and head to the field. At that time, we'll start filling the trucks, and that's about 3:20, maybe 3:30 when the trucks are getting filled. And that time is important because we can get to the scale house where the dump site is by 4 a.m. and that's when we're allowed to start dumping. Our shift is 4 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. And that isn't when we necessarily work, but that's when we're allowed to bring our trucks over the scale. So that's what determines the beginning and the ending of your shift. And so, you know, getting up at 2:20, I'm easily to the scale by 4, and then we'll turn a load about every hour to hour and 15 minutes, and bring it in. At the end of the day, we refuel. And we check the engines of the trucks, we check the tires, we check the lighting and the everything on the trailers, make sure it's all good for the next day, and park the trucks and go get some sleep. It makes for about a 16-hour day. We're coming out of the scale. The scale is 80 feet long and it can hold 50 ton. Fortunately, we don't weigh that much, but we weigh in, so they weigh the whole truck and everything in it. And after we unload the sugar beets, then they weigh it again and they subtract the empty weight from the full weight, and that's how much the farmer gets paid for. Hey, Cindy. Got a passenger here. Cindy is new at the scale this year and doing a wonderful job. We just love her. You better be back next year. All right, we ready to go? Yeah. Aha! Field card. This tells us what field the beets came from, and we have that scanned, just like groceries in a store. Then she punches the weight of the truck in, and that load is credited to that field. And away we go. So this machine has trucks on the left and trucks on the right. If you're on the left, your truck dumps the product out the back end, out the tailgate. If you're on the right-hand side, the entire truck is going to be lifted up and tipped sideways. Now, we have to get out of the truck for that, obviously, but you're getting an idea of what's happening here. They just opened the gate on that truck, and the beets started to slide out the left-hand side. Now the conveyor at the top of the pile, that swings left and right, and they'll unload beets until they're touching the conveyor. Then they will stop the operation entirely. The entire machine will lift itself up and it'll move away from the pile about 3 feet, and they begin the process again. So that's how that works. And when they determine how much space or how much tonnage of beets there's going to be, that's how they decide how high to make the pile. I've already been told that before they get to the end of this beet campaign, they will be raising the conveyor maybe as much as another 5 or 6 feet. This entire machine runs on electricity. There we go, dumping out the back, and we take turns. That way the unloading process is never stopped. It's efficient. So we just finished tipping this truck sideways. Now the other one is going to start dumping out the back, and a conveyor is going to take the beets from there to the center so they can go up the main conveyor. Now you'll see as the beets go up a steep conveyor, then they drop, and then they go on another conveyor. In between the two of them, there's a machine that cleans any dirt, pieces of weeds, small beets, things like that are removed. And they weigh that too. There's a scale underneath there. And they will send a signal back to the scale house and say, okay, truck number 27 just unloaded. They had 800 pounds of dirt, and that gets subtracted from my paycheck.
Okay, now look at the conveyor, and you see there's space under there. Now they can unload another whole bunch of trucks. And it'll set itself back down.
Now we're getting our scale ticket. So we're weighing the empty truck, and I don't know if you can see the detail here. Full weight, tare weight, which means empty weight. We had 620 pounds of dirt, 56,000 pounds, or 28 ton of good beets.